Hey everybody, Ian Bremmer here, and a quick take to kick off your week. I want to talk about the transatlantic relationship, the U.S. relationship with Europe, because of all of the geopolitics in the world. This is the one that I think has been impacted in a permanent and structural way in the first 2 months of the Trump administration. I wouldn't say that. For example, look at the Middle East and U.S. relations with Israel, the Saudis, the Emiratis, the rest of the Gulf states, frankly, all very comfortable with Trump. If there's a significant change, I would say it's incrementally more engaged and in terms of worldview than under the Biden administration. Japan, South Korea, Australia, India, you look at Asia relations, and certainly Trump and the U.S. on trade, worrying them, making them, sort of react in a more defensive posture, seeing how more quickly they can get something to the U.S. that will lead to trying to diffuse potential conflict there, but not radically different from the way they thought about the United States in 2017 in the first Trump term. Mexico, Canada, Panama, here you've got countries that are facing very significant challenges from the United States, but also ultimately understand that they have no other options. Now in Canada, that's a bigger fight because there are elections coming up at the end of April. But after those elections are over, I certainly expect that they will move quickly to try to ensure that ongoing relations are functional and stable. That's already true for the Mexican government, with a president who has 85% approval, can do pretty much everything necessary to ensure that U.S.-Mexico relations aren't dramatically impacted by everything Trump is demanding. Okay, so that's everywhere else. But in Europe, that's just not the case. Three different reasons why the Europeans are facing a much more permanent impact. The first is on the trade side, like everybody else. And trade is well within the European Union's competency. They understand that they have leverage. If the Americans are going to hit them with significant tariffs, they're going to hit back with the same numbers. But that means it's going to be relatively difficult and take a long time to resolve it, as opposed to places that are much weaker where they just fold quickly to the United States. Okay, fair enough. But still, that's not all that dramatically different from first term. Second point is there's a war going on in Ukraine, and the United States has made it very clear that they want to re-engage with Putin, who is Europe's principal enemy, and they're going to do that irrespective of how much the Europeans oppose it. And they're not going to take any European input in those conversations. Trump would like a rapprochement with Russia to include a Ukrainian ceasefire, but if that doesn't happen, he is oriented towards blaming the Ukrainians for it, towards taking Kremlin talking points on Ukraine not really being a country, and then on moving to ensure that U.S.-Russia relations are functional again. All of that is deeply concerning, is existentially concerning, particularly for a bunch of European countries that are on the front lines, spending a lot more in defense, not because the Americans are telling them to, but because they're worried about Russia themselves, feel like they have to be more independent. And then finally, because Europe is the supranational political experiment that relies most on common values and rule of law. And the United States under Trump is undoing that component of the U.S.-led order specifically. I wouldn't necessarily say that about collective security or existing alliances and willingness to provide some sort of defense umbrella, but I would certainly say that in terms of rule of law and territorial integrity. And here, the fact that the United States no longer really cares about territorial integrity, is prepared to tell Denmark, hey, you're not a good ally, you're not defending Greenland, we're interested in moving forward ourselves, and we don't care how you've treated us historically we're going to send our leaders and we're going to cut our own deal inside your territory. That's exactly the way the Germans felt when J.D. Vance said that he would wanted to engage directly with the Alternatives for Deutschland, who the Germans consider to be a neo-Nazi party. Everything that's core to the Europeans in their statehood and in the EU is the United States under Trump is on the other side of that, and it's increasingly conflictual. It's directly adversarial, and so I would say, number one, the Europeans are aware of these problems. Number two, they're taking them late, but nonetheless, finally, very seriously. And so they understand that the Europeans are going to have to create an independent strategy for their own self-defense, for their national security, for their political stability, for their democracies. And they have to do that outside of the United States. In fact, they have to do that and defend themselves against the United States. Now, that reality doesn't mean they're going to be successful. And indeed, the more summits I see on Ukraine, frankly, the less I have been convinced that the Europeans will be able to do enough, quick enough, to really help Ukraine dramatically, cut a better deal with a Russian Federation that is very uninterested in doing anything that is sustainable for the Ukrainians long term. It makes me worry that the EU longer term is not fit for purpose in an environment where the most powerful actors don't care about rule of law, the United States, China, and for Europe, Russia, right on their borders. So for all of those reasons, the European markets have gone up recently. European growth expectations have gone up because the Germans and others are planning on spending a lot more. That's short term. Long term here, I worry that the Europeans are in an awful lot of trouble. So something we'll be focusing on very closely going forward over the coming weeks and months. I hope you all are well, and I'll talk to you all real soon.